She came to finalize the divorce on a gray morning that felt heavier than winter itself. And in that single moment, everything Halland believed about his life collapsed. The courthouse hallway smelled of old paper and regret. As he lifted his eyes from the folder clenched tight in his hands, his breath caught painfully in his chest. Standing there was Chin, the woman he once loved enough to build a future with. Her face was calmer than he remembered, her posture steady. But her body had changed in a way he never expected. Beneath her coat was a life he had never known existed. She was 7 months pregnant. The shock froze him where he stood, as if time itself had paused just to watch him fall apart. Halland had imagined this day 100 times. The divorce was supposed to be quiet, clean, final, papers signed, separate lives, wounds sealed. For months, he told himself the ending was necessary, that love had simply worn down under the weight of pride, misunderstandings, and silence. But seeing Chin like this cracked open emotions he had buried beneath anger and routine. The pregnancy wasn't just a surprise. It was a mirror forcing him to face how little he truly knew about the woman he once shared a home with. Their marriage hadn't collapsed in one explosive moment. It eroded slowly. Long work hours, conversations postponed, needs left unspoken until they disappeared. Halland believed providing stability meant sacrificing presence. Chin needed connection more than comfort. When the distance became unbearable, neither of them fought hard enough to bridge it. The separation followed quiet, polite, like two strangers agreeing to forget something precious. Somewhere along the way, life continued without him. And now it stood before him in undeniable form. Chin carried herself with a quiet strength Halland had always admired, but never fully understood. The months apart had changed her. When she discovered she was pregnant, the world tilted beneath her feet. But she chose courage over chaos. She rebuilt her life slowly, one day at a time, without bitterness, without demands. The child growing inside her became her reason to wake up, to endure, to believe that endings could still give birth to meaning. Halland, on the other hand, had remained stuck, numbing himself with routine, convincing himself that walking away was easier than failing again. But that illusion shattered the moment he realized the future he abandoned had continued without his consent. Regret settled heavy on his chest, mixed with a fear he had never known before, the fear of becoming irrelevant to a life that might have been his greatest responsibility. As the legal process moved forward, the silence between them grew louder than any argument they'd ever had. Halland noticed the details he once ignored. The way Chin rested her hands protectively over her belly, the tired strength in her eyes, the patience in her movements. He wondered how many nights she had spent alone, how many fears she had faced without him. For the first time, he questioned whether walking away had been strength or avoidance disguised as dignity. The weeks that followed forced Halland into a reckoning with himself. He learned that love doesn't disappear when people fail each other. It waits bruised and quiet for accountability. He sought help, not to undo the past, but to understand the man he had become. Slowly, painfully, he learned that presence requires courage, not control. He stopped defending his choices and started examining them. Chin noticed the change not through grand gestures, but consistency. Halland respected boundaries, offered support without expectation, showed up when it mattered. He listened more than he spoke. Trust didn't return overnight. Healing never announces itself loudly. It arrives quietly through effort repeated without guarantee. As the pregnancy entered its final weeks, they stood at a crossroads. The divorce papers were still valid, the past still painful, the future uncertain. But something had shifted. What once felt like an ending now felt like an unanswered question. They were no longer the same people who had failed each other before. Halland realized love isn't proven through perfection but responsibility. Chin Chin realized forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting pain. It means refusing to let it define the rest of your life. Whether they would walk the same path again remained unknown. But for the first time in a long while, hope felt honest, not desperate. In the final days before the child's arrival, Halland understood something that would stay with him forever. Seeing Chin Chin 7 months pregnant on the day of their divorce wasn't a punishment. It was a wake-up call. Life had offered him a second chance, not guaranteed, not promised, but possible. And whether that chance meant rebuilding a family or simply becoming a better man, he vowed not to waste it. When the day finally came, and new life entered the world, it carried with it a quiet power, the power of renewal. Halland stood humbled, knowing that love is not measured by how tightly we hold on, but by how deeply we are willing to grow. Chin Chin looked forward, not bound by the past, but strengthened by it. And in that fragile, beautiful beginning, the story proved this simple truth. Even the most painful endings can open the door to grace, healing, and second chances if the heart is brave enough to accept them. Before you leave, stay with us for just a few more seconds. Some stories don't end when the screen fades, they stay with the heart. If this touched something in you, don't rush away. Take a breath and leave one word in the comments that describes how this made you feel.